Okay, shall we get going? It is 5:58. Maybe we can get out of here a few minutes early as well, right? Thank you for coming. Today is October 23rd. It's 2023, and let's go around the horn and introduce ourselves, even though I think we know everybody, but it's still always nice. Jen, would you like to start?
Yep, I'm Jen Patterson. I work for Deschutes County as the Street Strategic Initiatives Manager, and I am the staff person assigned to support this committee.
Detective Dustin Miller with the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, legal marijuana enforcement team.
Anthony Ramos, Detective, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, also legal marijuana enforcement.
Jeremy Giffen, Deschutes Basin Water Master with the Oregon Water Resources Department.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Dr. Andrew Austin, member of the public.
Thank you, Andrew. Liz Latachinsky, I'm serving as chair currently.
Mary Fleischman, public.
Matt Hurt, Cannabis Nation.
All right, thank you. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our last meeting on July 17. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion, we, make much say, support those. Okay. They're okay, they're approved, yeah.
Okay, Mary has made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dustin. All in favor, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Yay. Okay. Water usage.
Yes,
This is you.
fire me up, Jen.
Arnia, let's see here.
You with the slide deck.
Yeah, I'm gonna kill you guys with
Oh.
PowerPoint.
Bring it on.
Just Try uncle when there's too many slides. I was poaching them off other people's slideshows that have done these around the state, so.
Good, good, good.
Right, everyone can see that? Let me
Yes.
switch to
Slideshow. Maybe AI would do all this automatically, right?
and then I can give you
It
the.
responds to my
Let's flicker
I
forward.
think it's just, yeah, I think you just click it. But you-
There we go.
Okay.
So the first two slides I have are gonna be exempt uses of groundwater and surface water. And we can spend as much time as you guys want on the water use, part of this. So exempt uses of groundwater, those that do not require a water right from the Water Resource Department. So anyone who has a well in the state of Oregon is allowed these exempt uses. You can't get additional water for exempt uses if you punch multiple wells on your property, or if you link them together. So a well on a discrete tax lot is allowed these exempt uses, in Oregon is very generous. When I go to Western waterlog things around the Western US, states around us give about 5,000 gallons a day. Oregon, 15,000 gallons per day for domestic purposes.
Can you put that in perspective? How many showers could I take for 15,000?
Yeah.
The average house is about 250 to 300 gallons a day. So I actually have subdivisions of 25 homes. And if they're careful on their outside watering, which is separate, but that's usually what trips them up. But if they're careful on the water use, you can have 25 homes hooked up to a domestic well that's exempt. It's not exempt from state health requirements. So it's got to be tested. Anything over 3 hookups on a well has to be tested by state health to make sure the water quality is good. But in terms of quantity, and this is Oregon Revised Statute 537, 545, we've been very generous, and they've made runs at trying to dial this back over the year, but I don't see these changing anytime soon. 15,000 gallons a day, a lot of water. In addition, these are all in addition to each other. 5,000 gallons per day for industrial or commercial uses. So up until about 5 years ago, I was more than 20 years telling people who came into my office, hey, I have a business, I'm gonna grow this. And I said, oh, we'll use the 5,000 gallons a day, commercial. Well, as soon as hemp and marijuana was legalized in the state of Oregon, the AG took a look at it again and said, whoa, that's not a commercial use. If you're using water to produce a product, not grow it, not irrigate it. So the AG's opinion that came out said, there's a use called irrigation, and that takes a water right. So commercial is to not include irrigation. So that was a pretty big blow. All the water master's offices across the state go, wow, that's not been our interpretation, but we had to run with it starting then. So starting about,
What does industrial commercial mean?
well, just, you do not need a water right if you pull from your well. For industrial, could be, road watering, there's a whole flurry of uses under there. Commercial, if you're using the water to make a product,
Like brewery?
yeah, or if the water is a product. So if you wanted to start up a water bottling business at your house, go ahead, as long as you don't go over 5,000 gallons a day. But that new interpretation from the Attorney General, though, really said the commercial part is you cannot use water with the intent to sell if you're irrigating something.
Oh.
So if you're irrigating something for yourself, you're fine. And so your own use marijuana would be fine.
Is that the Senate bill that was passed this year? The commercial crop, Senate Bill 326.
Oh, that doesn't sound familiar.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. So now commercial does not include irrigation with the intent to grow or intent to sell. That's what we do. 1/2 acre lawn or non-commercial garden, again, Oregon, very generous there. That's the one that trips up most people. We have shared wells all over because the groundwater is so deep here and it's so expensive to get a well. We have a lot of shared wells, and those are some of the nastiest fights I've ever seen is shared wells. But the 1/2 acre, so you'll get 3 houses hooked up to 1 well. And so because it's not a discrete system, they're limited to just the exempt uses for that 1 well. So they have to share that is what I'm getting at. And so you always get the guy that wants the 1/2 acre lawn and leaves the other 2 without any lawn available to be grown. That causes a lot of fights. And how the Oregon Water Resources Department regulates this is we regulate it from the source. So if I have 3 neighbors that are fighting with each other and they're sharing a well, I shut the well off. And so that usually cleans that. I don't go after the bad actor. I go after the source. And that's how we regulate in the state of Oregon.
And you can do that on private property. You can turn the well off.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, we're tasked with managing the water resources, surface water and groundwater in the state of Oregon. So the 1/2 acre lawn, non-commercial garden, you can't add on to that. We get people trying all kinds of tricky stuff, putting a well on another piece of property or whatever, but it's discrete systems. Stock watering. We've gotten our language on this has changed over the last couple of years. I've gone out to people's places where they are flood irrigating their field and they have their stock out there. I'm watering my stock. That's irrigation. And even to the extent of people filling these ponds all around the county, now it's got to be going to a stock tank. And so we're getting a lot stricter on that. Fire control, a couple years ago, we had a change to the rule where firefighting training is also allowed in there. But, go ahead.
So if you were to store that 15,000 because you're not utilizing it, it can't add on to acreage or anything like that?
No, we probably even go after you for a storage rate. For
Really?
storing it, yeah. The 1/2 acre is a footprint of 1/2 acre. You can't rotate it, you can't change it from year to year. You're stuck with that 1/2 acre. The interesting thing though, the law never said the rate associated with that. Obviously, beneficial use in the state of Oregon is the measure. So if you're, watering your lawn and it's running down the road, I'll probably regulate you back because you're using too much water. But because that causes a lot of grief for me when I'm trying to regulate a domestic well, because the 1/2 acre does not have a rate associated with it. I put a flow meter on there and all of a sudden they're taking, 50,000 gallons a day. And they go, oh, well, that's my lawn takes a lot of water. And it takes away kind of my teeth there. So then I end up putting flow meters on the irrigation system on their house, and splitting it up that way. But again, the bottom line, no irrigation with intent to sell product without a water rate.
So how,
Sorry,
go ahead.
hydroponics considered commercial? Is that a loophole? Because you could grow your fishes. And
Well,
Are
that's-
you talking about reclaimed, recirculated water?
Yeah, I guess And it's like you fill once and the fishes have a byproduct of plants.
You know, we've danced around this one quite a bit. Central Oregon Irrigation District delivers water for stock. You know, these canals in Central Oregon, how they run in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Well, they're allotted from the Deschutes decree, stock water runs, which used to be to fill cisterns, people would drink that stuff. Then it's to fill ponds. Well, we had a couple cases where people had koi and they said, that's my stock. And so there's been a lot of new rules in irrigation districts that stock have to have a hoof now, not a tail.
What about chickens?
As water gets tighter, people are looking for loopholes and things like that. We've been pretty strict on that. All right, surface water, ORS 537-141. Natural springs that arise and fall on the property. So this has been exempt forever in Oregon water law. And if a spring rises on your property, does not go into a defined channel or leave the property at any time, that is your water to do with as you please. And if that happened on your property, you can go ahead and grow marijuana with it because that is an exempt use. That's another one, you know, it's interesting how many properties I go to and there's a backhoe out there. What are you doing? I'm chasing this spring down. No, that's groundwater. I mean, if you're going into the ground like that, that's stock watering. I find someone in Christmas Valley last winter for pumping from their well, sending it down 7 miles a ditch to their stock. Well, that's again, you know, that's irrigation. So we're really strict about putting it in a closed stock water tank now. Obviously, fire control, fish protection, not if you're growing for hydroponics, but this is more egg incubation programs, things like that. Rainwater collection from impervious surface. You know, no one ever really took advantage of this until probably the last 7-8 years. And we've got a lot of people that are hooking up their downspouts to little ponds and things like that. And you can catch that. We were on the news maybe 5-6 years ago. I don't know if you remember on Good Morning America, there was this guy out of Central Point who said, you know, Oregon's so strict with their water. I was just collecting rainwater and they shut me off. Well, nobody really looked into the facts of the case. What really happened was rain was falling in the mountains. It was coming down this creek, going into a bigger creek, which is through his property. He dammed off the creek that also supplied the city of Medford with their drinking water. So he was collecting rainwater, but after it was public water. So when water gets into a natural waterway, it's waters of the state and it's there's no exemption from that.
Has there been any thought about collecting water runoff from all of those solar panels?
I haven't heard, but you know, I've been actually shocked at, I'm getting a lot of complaints on the solar panels for these solar farms.
Yeah.
Because it takes, again, the 5,000 gallons a day, industrial, commercial, that's to clean the glass on them.
Yeah.
And I get, these solar farms exceeding the 5,000 gallons a day and I'm requiring water right now. Because it takes so much to keep the glass clean on those.
It was like 20% just off of the dirty vents.
Yeah, and so they're on it, always washing it, and that's where a lot of the farmers, because they're putting those solar farms up all over in, you know, EFU areas. And so a lot of the farmers are upset about that, saying, hey, they're not exempt, they're using too much water.
Wow.
And I didn't think there was anything to that until we started monitoring some of them, and they're using, you know, upwards of 10,000 gallons a day, keeping the glass clean. These are hot off the press, Deschutes County 2023 numbers, so that's this year so far, and I guess the season's kind of winding down. OLCC sites, and these are total sites, OLCC sites, ODA sites, unregistered, so illegal, 4, and because we've received a lot of funding for staff for marijuana now, and so when this, you know, up until a year ago, I was the water master and the marijuana guy for Central Oregon. Now we have 14 new assistant water masters, so they come through here on a sweep every, 2-3 weeks. And boy, I just got I don't even know they're here. And then I get all these copies of notices of violation. And so they're really hammering it right away when they see it. And we're putting them in regulatory.
So what are they looking for then?
Well, we're focused on the water use, and so, and like all water issues, we don't even have to really go look at it. Neighbors are, I mean, it's amazing how many calls I get a day from people that say, you know, this is my sister who lives next door, you're gonna make it really uncomfortable to use my name at Thanksgiving this year, but you know, they're doing X, Y, and Z with the water. So it comes out of the woodwork right away when people are illegally using water. I get, even if a greenhouse goes up, whether they're growing anything or not, we get a lot of calls saying they're doing something bad in there, you know, go check it. So
And you go check it, or your team goes check it.
I go, well, historically, I'd go check it, but if I suspect it's marijuana, we're flush with marijuana staff now, so.
And do you ever incorporate or find sheriff department?
Yes, when we do raids, but these staff have been contacting these guys, right? And you guys are working in coordination.
Yeah, we haven't got a lot of referrals, but yes.
But OSP's been calling me for Northern Lake County, which is part of my territory, every time there's a raid and said, come on down, we're doing this. And so I've been going out during the raid. And my understanding, after talking to them, is they don't always have a lot of teeth in their rules. And so water is a big deal now in the state of Oregon. And we can really hammer some people on the water use. And so that's why, hey, bring those guys along. You know, they've got more teeth than we do with our rules on water use.
And getting access to the property is not a problem for you, because that's what I've heard in other situations is, you know, you've got to ask permission to come on site and.
Well, with the water master's office, that's never really been an issue. Unless there's an expectation of privacy and they tell us not to, then we go just get a warrant. But up until that point, we just go on.
Knock, knock, knock.
Yeah, and if you're a water right holder, that's a part of your water right. When you read through, you shall maintain access for the water master. This is a regulated
Wow.
public resource, so it may sound a little weird, but I've always just gone on. I mean, I go to court quite a bit. I've never had a problem. I have had some people, boy, in 27 years, I think I've had maybe 5 that have said, I don't want you on my property, don't come on here, and then I just go and get a warrant.
That's probably when you're not doing something.
What's that?
I said that's probably when you're trying to hide something. Don't come on my property. What is the, like, be or maximum penalty for you finding something bad?
Well, and I don't know the exact numbers because they're changing all the time, but we have type 1, type 2, type 3 penalties. We had you know, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Saddleback subdivision on your way to
Oh,
Shevlin
yeah,
Park or just
yeah.
past Shevlin Park on. Okay, their well's really messed up. The owner of the well, that's Sun Country Water that serves them. The water keeps shutting off. All these things are going wrong. I think I did a minor violation on them, and I think it was like 300 or 400 a day that I was able to find them. But the thing about our fines is it's each time you catch the offense. So when I have some real bad actors out there that are doing something more serious, like a $1,500 a day type fine, I'll go out at 9 o'clock, get them then. I'll go out at 10, I get them again. So it's each visit. And then it really starts racking up. But a lot of the bad apples, they just, I mean, when you look, they're already, the revenue department's already in for, you know, 100,000 on them and they haven't been paying.
Right, right.
So we're, you know, we're kind of limited on that, but I had a guy growing alfalfa who was a constitutionalist out in Crook County, and I went to court with him, and it was something else. He represented himself in court, which was not good for him. But they garnished his Social Security. I mean, they really hammered him, and
Wow,
so they got the money out of him.
they're serious about this, huh?
Yeah.
So the 54 OLCC high THC, what does that mean? Those are the sites that you visited?
Those are the total sites we did research on, and
Okay.
those are the ones that are in Deschutes County. And this was put together by Scott, not myself, but he just got these done for me yesterday. But he said that the OLCC, and we're really starting to get our stuff together. I guess when this fired up with ODA, it was a mess, and people were, you know, I know everyone was going out and getting water from all these different sources, and it was kind of unclear what was legal or not. But the form for the water use now, before you get your license through LCC, is pretty heavy duty. It comes into my office. I mean, we make sure that you're fully covered on your water use
Okay.
before you even get your license and get into the program.
So these aren't illegal grows.
Let me,
No, they have to have them do an evaluation and sign off before they're even allowed to have that license.
Okay,
that was the column on the third column over, I think it was, the 4. They had 4 that we
Okay,
found that were
okay.
illegal.
those were the.
When you look at the numbers down in Southwest region, things like that, it's way worse. So it's really not a big problem here. And when all this kind of kicked off about 2019 or 20, I did an audit in Deschutes County. I went around to all the marijuana grows, checked the flow meters to see what, because that, there was a big thing out there from all the farmers saying, they're draining the aquifer, all this water's going away. I mean, at the end of the day, it was a drop in the bucket. I mean, it really, when you look at, commercial agriculture that's going on in Deschutes County and,
Yeah,
Jefferson County, we're talking gobs of water. And when I mean, it wasn't even really measurable, the marijuana was using. But when you go to, the other violations are terrible, what they're doing to the ground and what they're doing to the quantity of the water, or quality of the water. A lot of these, the raids I've been on, they're a mess. There's no cap on the wellhead, and they're pumping into a swimming pool, and it's backdrafting back down into the well with all those chemicals in there. So those are the real, it's not so much the quantity, is what they're doing to the quality, but down in Southwest, it's the quantity. I mean, there's a lot of grows down there that are taking a lot of water, especially from, senior legal diversions that have been in place since the mid 1800s. So
right.
we're getting a lot of complaints on this.
So that last set said 19 site visits and 54 registered grows. So are you guys visiting a third? Or is that complaints that you guys are going out on those site visits?
We're trying to visit them all, but there's a lot across the state. It's just we recently got these 14 assistant water masters who focus on marijuana.
Okay.
And so they're trying to visit all of them. My understanding after talking to Scott is they've done the research on all of them and they know what's legal and what's not. They haven't visited them all.
Okay.
3-4 years ago when this really started to ramp up, I went and visited all of the ones in Deschutes County that I knew of, just for checking water quantity, because that was a big thing out there. And I thought, well, a lot of these are drip systems. They can't be using what the guy flood irrigating his grass is using. And at the end of the day, that's what I found. I even made it into High Times magazine with that. Like 15
minutes of mine.
And you guys probably know more about these next slides than I do. Farm bill passed in 2018, 2019. ODA hemp program was going, and from what and then Scott Gross was actually our first staff that was hired for marijuana regulation. Department of Ag funded that for the Water Resources Department. And what he was finding when he was visiting the hemp sites down in Southern Oregon was 90% of them were hemp. They were the real deal, but they were going under hemp. 5 million funding for OWRD. I don't know what year that happened. I think it was last year or the year before. But 14 new cannabis assistant water masters, and we got to retool our enforcement section. Our enforcement section prior to this was, we used to call it the non-enforcement section. It took hundreds of letters to get people. Boy, I tell you now that we've revamped our whole enforcement section. I find a violation, I send it over, and there's a notice of violation gone out within 24 hours. I mean, we are quick on water regulation now in the state of Oregon. It's before it was, sadly enough, it was months before we really got serious with people. I would beg people to stop illegal using and things like that, but now we hit them with the hammer right off the bat.
That is great.
House Bill 4061, water users or water suppliers and haulers now all have to have documentation. So you guys might be familiar with the Greens out the alfalfa store out there.
Yeah.
And alfalfa with that coin op, they've been running forever out there. So we make them keep a record and a log of who they're selling to. And if you're taking water from that site and using it for marijuana, you need to have a record of that as well.
Wow. Very good.
And more assistant, I can't believe, when I started with the state, I think we had 14 assistant water masters statewide. And now we have that many that are just dedicated to marijuana.
Wow.
There's one of the sites from Southern Oregon, and this is what I saw in Northern Lake County too. My 3 or 4 rates that we went down there, it's just lots of chemicals. They're putting it usually in a swimming pool, above ground swimming pool. They're pumping out of the well into there, mixing it together, and then going onto the plants from there. And a lot of times when we bust them, I mean, the mess is just amazing. And what we've been finding down there recently is once we bust them and they run, they're coming back. So these are property owners that are absentee property owners that are renting out to somebody. And, lo and behold, this cartel takes over and does this. We chase them off of there, and then they're setting shot back up. So that's where we're really trying to hit the landowners really hard so that they don't, rent their property, these bad apples. But some of our fines are starting to get up there enough to where it's painful. And so we're starting to see a change.
And are the property owners paying the fines?
Yes, we don't go after whoever's on the grow. We always, Oregon Water Law, we always go back to the tax records, who owns the property. And we make it uncomfortable for them to where they get rid
And
of
you can
people.
garnish, I mean, you garnish that guy's.
Oh, yeah, no, and we hit them pretty hard now.
But they still then allow these people to come back.
Yeah, that's really the raid that we had in Lake County 3 weeks ago with Oregon State Police was 2 sites that we busted last summer. And I'm shocked that the landowner would be willing to put themselves at risk again like that, but
But was it a remote landowner? Like
yes, yeah, they don't.
so he or she had no idea?
Yeah, but they're these aren't so much squatters, these are renters that, they'll rent their property out to
Right,
someone who
right.
grows, and then they get rid of them, and then they just come back. I don't know why they would re-rent
Yeah,
the place to them, because we hit those, and these are, 2,000-3,000 mile away landowners, but we hit them pretty good with fines on the water use, so.
Payoff must be somewhere in between there though.
Yeah, and I think it's so profitable that you have a hard time saying no.
So we send innocent owner paperwork and say illegal activity is happening on your property and you're now on notice. If this happens again, we'll move towards asset forfeiture.
Mm.
That's what
Is that making a difference?
it has been so far.
Have you had to enforce that?
We have not had to enforce the innocent ownership paperwork second time usage. We have gone towards asset forfeiture on some properties, but we have not. Usually they get that letter, and that letter says essentially, hey, you're on notice, illegal activities happening here. It's your responsibility to make sure that if you do lease this out, that it's on the up and up. And if not, we're going to be coming after your property civilly. And we haven't had any issues, which has been good. And we've been doing that paperwork for a little over 2 years now. Okay. Or maybe right at 2 years, yeah.
So we're seeing a positive change here. 2022, out of all the investigations, about a third of the sites did not have water rights, but early on, it was more like 90. It was a real problem early on, but we're starting to clean that up, and I think through the OLCC licensing, it's getting a lot better. Here's kind of a graph of the statewide with the grow sites, and there's that 37% without a water right, and then the 63 with. And it really kind of shows where the growing is going on across the state. However, there's been quite a bit in Lake County. I'm surprised we don't have any triangles on there.
How does, like renting a warehouse in city limits and using municipal water, do you still have a right for that, or are you
Nope,
allowed to
we're
do
good.
that? Okay.
So when there's a water provider like Avion, a city, those are called quasi-municipal or municipal water rights. And that's a blanket coverage. I mean, if you want, you can start a water park in there. There's nothing I can do to stop it. And when it comes to water rights, like if you have an irrigation water right on your property that you got 10 years ago, it's gonna have this much water, a rate, it's gonna have a duty, the total for the whole season that you're allowed to do it, irrigate. You're gonna have a footprint that's exact. The location of the well is exact. You're gonna have drawdown conditions. If your well's dropping too much, I can shut you. There's pages and pages of conditions. Quasi-municipal or municipal water right, like Avion or City of Redmond, City of Bend, City of Primeville, those are like a blank check. The only teeth I have in there is has to be used in the service boundary of the city. And they have to stay under their rate. They don't even have a duty, like an overall water lump usage. So really cities get a flat out rate of water and they can use it for whatever purpose. And I really don't have any teeth in it. I get calls all day long, people saying, I just drove down Colorado Avenue and there's a river going down. Why don't you get those guys for their sprinklers going everywhere? In a quasi-municipal water right, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, if you have an irrigation water right, you're a private landowner, yeah, you know, I can get you for wasting water, exceeding your rate, putting water where it's not supposed to go, a lot of different things.
And your coverage is the out of the ground, right? Or does it include irrigation canals, like the irrigation district?
Like my jurisdiction is water master. It's all water, groundwater, surface water, any water within the boundaries of my district, well, statewide, but down into the aquifer as well.
Cause I hear all the time, in my other position as, soil and water conservation director for Zone 5. That our biggest issue is the use it or lose it mentality, cause if you're not using it, they'll take it away, and kind of the unlimited nature, but I'm hearing there's some caveats to the limit.
Yeah, I mean, people who don't know anything about water all know use it or lose it. It's Oregon Revised Statute 540.610, and it says if you don't use your water, and we're not talking exempt water, we're talking water rights now. If you don't use your water and for 5 consecutive years, you can lose it through forfeiture. And Oregon water law was derived from old mining laws, same thing. If you have a mining claim and you're not using it, well, the next person gets to use it. Oregon water law works the same, where if you're not using your water, like let another water, you'll lose your water right and another water right gets to use it.
But doesn't that mean just turn on the irrigation once in 5 years?
Beneficial use
Well,
is
okay, I'm
what
gonna
the rule is.
try to grow hay.
Yeah, well, you gotta do better than trying. You gotta grow something. It's gotta be a
Oh, so
beneficial use.
you do have to
Yeah.
grow,
Yeah,
okay.
usually.
But there's loophole, there's rebuttals to forfeiture in statute. It used to be A, B, and C. Now it's A, B, C, D, all the way down to like Q. It's amazing rebuttals. Like if it's, if you didn't use water because there was a drought and it wasn't available at your point of diversion, you're exempt from, or you can rebut forfeiture. There's a lot of, and then another one on top of that, we've been talking about cities. Those water rights are not subject to forfeiture. Quasi-municipal municipal water rights, you know, I have the city of Primeville with an 1854 water right out of Ochoco Creek that has never been used, and they're trying to get that lighted up and start using it. I can't go after it for forfeiture because it's a municipal water right. Yeah, so there's when I first started as water master, I would go out and see fields that I know haven't been irrigated, and I'd go after them and say, and go to court and take them away. Nowadays, you know, everyone, attorneys up right away, the litigious nature.
Yeah.
So I ended up, about 2000, 2005, being in court all the time. My department said, whoa, this isn't, we have attorney fees that are going crazy, stop this. So we actually, as a department, don't go after forfeiture anymore. That's out there though, and everyone's like, oh, watch out for that water master, he's checking your water usage. No.
Yeah, we hear that there are planes overhead. Now there's probably drones looking at all the acreage.
But what we
right?
do have is we have neighbors, and neighbors come in and they're upset that, you know, he hasn't used his water, take it away. Well, here's an affidavit, sign it up, you know, fill it out and sign it. So we go to a hearing, but the main takeaway from this is the state is tired of the attorney bills.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna let private landowners go after these instead of us, so.
Yeah. And if they're not using it, the water is being used, right? I mean, it's somewhere.
Oh, yeah, but you could see the motivation from, let's say you're on a creek and you have an 1880 water right, your neighbor has an 1881 water right, and you keep shutting them off.
Yeah.
He sees that you haven't used it for 5 years.
Yeah.
He's very highly motivated to have yours taken away, and he gets water all the time.
Right.
And so it's, you know, for personal
Mhm.
reasons, people, and plus people just, you know, a lot of people just hate their neighbor. I mean, a lot of people really go after water rights. I mean, just to go after them.
Yeah.
But it's difficult now. It goes to a hearing and there's some cost involved. And to go a little bit further on that, every court case that I've been involved with, the person who was claimed to not use their water didn't lose their water right, because that's such a hard leap to show that they did not, to prove without a doubt that they did not beneficially use for 5 years. I've had a judge say, well, were you there on Christmas Day 3 years ago? I wasn't. You could have been using it. And so it's difficult to take water rights away. That's kind of the takeaway. So just more slides showing the sources of the water and how many of these sites that we're visiting. And again, the state of Oregon has regions. You know, I'm districts and regions, and we usually don't wander outside of our district or region, but we've really changed the way we do water law violations with these new 14 assistant water masters. We've got them crisscrossing the state, going all over looking for marijuana grows. I mean, that is a very high priority for the Water Resources Department. We're really going after that. Again, more data on what we've done. Most of our stuff was for 2022 because we wrapped that up, crunched the data, made a bunch of graphs, and we presented it to the Water Resources Commission. So that's the statewide most accurate data, not the most recent. That's why we worked on getting Deschutes County the other day. But again, just showing the investigations that we're going to. We're really visiting all the sites now. This breaks up surface water and groundwater, what we're seeing on these visits. And again, you know, Southwest is just a hotbed. There's
Wow. Is that your territory too?
no, I'm Jefferson, Deschutes, Northern Klamath, Northern Lake, and I was Crook. But we cut that district out, and we have a brand new water master here in the Bend office who covers Crook County now.
Okay.
It was just too much for me to handle. I was up to 15,000 square miles with a lot of water violations. I was only skimming the top, so we broke my district up. But no, the Southwest is really the spot. And you know, all the complaints and investigations we've done here in Central Oregon, it hasn't been so much about, again, senior users not getting their water. It's just, hey, this guy's doing something that looks sketchy. Down in the Southwest though, that's actually a problem on those creeks. And the Applegate Valley and stuff is, we started getting so many new marijuana uses that it was cutting into the senior legal water rights. I mean, we were using that amount of water down there on these grows.
That was even prior to when it became legal.
Yes.
It's always been a problem down there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, for OLCC on-site investigations and formal enforcement notices, we've really stepped it up in the last year with that new enforcement department. We're visiting a site, and that day we're going out with a violation. After that, if we don't see a change, then we go after a notice of assessment, and that's when we start hitting your wallet. Which was kind of nice that all the marijuana funds went towards a new enforcement section, because we really didn't have an enforcement section before. We would just, you know, kill people with nice letters forever. And now, you know, we're going after people within the day that we find it.
Yeah, that's great.
The 424 LCC grow sites inspected, and a lot of green on that map. So early days with ODA, when we were going investigating these, you know, the vast majority were illegal water use, but now it's really starting to clean the act up. Unregistered cannabis site investigations.
So these are illegal? No.
Yeah, I just went over this with Scott. This is Scott's slide. I think he said these were illegal.
Okay.
So I think that's what it was. He said he did not include any of the medical marijuana in any of the stats and figures.
Okay.
We just assumed that those are good. He said we're still having a problem with them though, because people under medical marijuana growing way more than what they're allowed to. We're still running into that, but we kept that out. So these would be illegal sites that were visited. And again, the lion's share of groundwater, and that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing here in this basin, is groundwater use. It's just hard to tease it out on a private well, what they're using for the cannabis and what they're using for, because again, Oregon has such lenient amounts that you're allowed to do without a water right. Illicit grow sites inspected, and again, the lion's share down in the southwest region. Hemp sites. So again, the violations are dropping and things are looking a lot better. And I think a lot of it is, I get the growers coming into my office all the time. Hey, I need you to fill out this form before I can even get started. And so I think we're catching up. We were way behind for the last couple of years. And so now we're just finally getting to where we should be.
And I think the number of hemp grow sites have really gone down, it
Yeah.
kind of was the gold in the next agricultural thing and it didn't pan out, so.
Yep, and especially in the irrigation districts here. I mean, that was a major use in the irrigation districts. Now it's hard to find.
Right.
And I didn't go. I have some more slides on there, but I haven't had a chance to review them, so I don't know what we'll be looking at.
I mean, when it costs so much to grow it and then you make no money on it,
I know.
I don't know if it could be used for like animal feed.
I think it's too hard for the stomachs of the animals.
And there's not a lot of processing, so I saw so many hemp farms go for sale.
In the raids I did in Northern Lake County, they came in, cut it, threw it in a big pile, and then went over it with a tractor a bunch of times. And I was like, you're just gonna leave it there? You're not gonna burn it? And they said, oh, it'll be mildewed and ruined within 48 hours, or is that what you guys are doing?
Depends. We've disposed of weed a lot of ways. We have cut it down, we've watered it, we've put the visqueen back over it so that it starts to break down. Most of the time we dispose of it in the landfill.
But on all these, I don't know of a grow site where we go on and we don't find anything wrong with it. It's just the same as the general public. If I was to go out and you had a groundwater right on your property, there's so many conditions on your water right. I'm gonna find something if I wanna find something wrong with your water right. Something as simple as the rates we went on, they didn't have a well ID tag. So that's a violation, so we went after them for that.
How do you know if they're drawing more than the 15,000 gallons per day? Because I used to live on Couch Market in Tumalo, so I had a well, I had irrigation. Nobody came and checked my well.
You had irrigation from your well?
No, I had surface, well, I had, Tumalo irrigation
Okay,
was
yeah.
my irrigator.
Yeah.
And then I had a domestic well.
Well, again, Oregon's so generous with the amounts. If you're using more than the exempt amounts on your property, it's probably running off your property.
It would have to.
Yeah, we're complaint driven, and it's pretty obvious when someone's overusing, but what happens now, and this happened in a couple rates in La Pine, I think that you guys were probably involved in last week, where we issued measure and device notices on these exempt wells, which is kind of unheard. That's not real common. We don't usually, a water right well, we have a flow meter on there and we want to know what you're using, but it's so hard to find someone overusing outside of the half-acre irrigation. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But overusing the amounts that are allowed there, gosh, you're pumping away. That's a lot of water. But now we're starting to put flow meters on more and more. If I suspect something, I'll put a flow meter on. And if it's
From the pump?
from the pump
Okay.
the first time, if I find that you're taking a gobs of water, like whatever complaint came in, then I'll probably break up your system on your flow meter if you're saying, oh, that's my lawn takes lots of water. And so then we start breaking it up, going, okay, what's going into the house? What's going to the lawn?
Really?
Yeah, to
Wow.
see exactly where the water's going.
Sounds like a lot of holes to dig.
Well, flow meters aren't cheap. They're expensive.
Oh, you
So-
pass that along to them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you can't use the well until you get a flow meter on. is what we're.
What's a flow meter cost?
Man, you guys are tough.
Yeah, well, a lot tougher than we used to be. For a small one, you're about $1,500. We require a totalizing flow meter. And so historically, so just to describe a water rate has a rate and a duty. The rate is the instantaneous and the duty is what you've taken so far that season. Both have limitations. And so most of the flow meters have, either a digital display or a sweep needle. Think of like in your car and you're driving, you have a speedometer saying how fast you're going. You have an odometer that says how many miles you've gone. Well, when I go out, I check what's their rate. Okay, they're taking within their rate. And then I take a picture of their odometer on there. And then I go back a month later and I say, well, okay, are you exceeding, like, a lot of people, they see me coming down the road, they're dialing it down.
But still 5.47 something million gallons a year per well, legally exempt.
Well, I
Well, 15,000 a day.
15,000 a day, in addition to all the other uses. So you could be easily 40,000 gallons a day from a well and still be legal, depending on, if you're, and most of that's gonna be in the irrigation portion.
So are we running out of water here?
Oh, now we're
There's
getting
a little bit of
political. So,
Is that a political question?
I like the work it is. The aquifer is dropping and has been dropping for quite a while.
Okay.
Our latest, we did a study in the 90s, USGS OWRD, looking into this. We've done several updates. Where we break it down now is 65% of the drop in the aquifer is due to climate variation. We're not getting as wet of years as we historically did. The lion's share of this aquifer, 65% is dropping because of that. Then about 20% is from increased pumping in the basin. And then about 15% or so, whatever's left over out of that, is from the canal lining. We were, in Central Oregon, we divert on a summer day here, 1,500 CFS down these canals. 50% of that goes into the ground. So you gotta think, that's 750 CFS of groundwater recharge that was going on.
That's what you're piping.
Yes. The Lava Butte on your way to Sun River, that pushed over the Deschutes River many, many years ago, but the Deschutes River goes over it. The groundwater table is pretty deep right there. It's about 350 feet deep. And we lose 6% of the Deschutes River just right there, going over this Swiss cheese
Oh, 'cause it's
looking
so
lava.
porous.
It's super porous. And that's why our aquifer here is so unique. A lot of the arguments I hear though, and that have some merit, is groundwater in Central Oregon was one of the last places in the state that we really started using groundwater. Because you had to drill through solid rock basalt and go down 400 or 500 feet to hit the water. That was tough. We weren't doing that till probably the 50s and 60s.
But that's why we have some of the best water.
But that's also, it's very filtered, and that's why City of Bend is always crushing everyone on the awards. But the thought out there is, we started putting canals in 1899, zigzagging across Central Oregon. We started taking water out of the chutes and infiltrating that into the aquifer. The thought is, we kind of built up a pillow there of artificial recharge.
In the aquifer.
Yeah, that
Because-
probably
yeah.
was because we were leaking and nobody was
Right.
pumping.
Right.
We were adding. And so now that the aquifer is dropping, people are saying, well, are we going back to equilibrium?
Right.
And the cities right now are arguing about the new rules from the Water Resources Department, which really is gonna limit groundwater usage because of the dropping aquifer. Well, the cities are going, okay, our aquifer is 1,000 foot deep. So we had a 20-foot decline. Really? I mean, let's put that scale on a wall.
Right.
We just came down a quarter inch,
Right, right.
is that enough to shut off the cities? But as a rule of thumb, the trouble areas on the Deschutes aquifer that we're seeing start north into Bend, heading towards Redmond, just north of Redmond. If you were to circle that area out past Pronghorn and over to Highway 97, we're getting some pretty good drops, over a foot a year, steady for over 20 years.
Wow.
But the real rule of thumb is if you start at the Cascades, going east, everything on this side of 97 is dropping about a foot or a half foot a year. Everything on the other side, closer to a foot, maybe a little over a foot a year. Which makes sense. When we see declining aquifers all across the state, closer to the source, being the Cascade Mountains that snow up there and go into the
Right.
aquifer,
Right.
closer to the source, you're not gonna see that drop. So historically, when I became water master, I would watch a good snow year like 1999 happen. I'd look at my, 3 months later, after the snow fell and started melting, I'd look at my observation well at Black Butte Ranch. It'd shoot up, and here's this underground wave of water.
Yeah,
And then, 2 months later, my well and sisters observation well would shoot up.
yeah.
And then my one in downtown Redmond at the industrial park would shoot up. But by the time it got out to Powell Butte, it kind of was gone.
Mm.
That's changed today when we have we haven't had a real gangbuster year, but when we get a decent snowpack or precipitation year, instead of it bringing the aquifer up, it just flatlines it for a little bit. So what we're seeing, if you look at our wells, is that during good years it goes flat, but then it really drops in times like this.
Mm.
And our aquifer right now is the worst we've seen it since we've been measuring it. And we're seeing that in the spring flows. If I were to put a graph up there of Fall River, you guys know Fall River is spring fed river, and put that next to my well and sisters, they track perfect. And so what they're really doing is showing the groundwater table throughout Central Oregon, what's going on with it. And Fall River, we've been running that gauge for 90 years. I'm measuring it now, the lowest flows that have ever come out of it.
Wow.
So the aquifer is really,
Parched.
it's parched. We're out of water. We're still dropping. It's a one-way street. We're seeing that in Lake County. We're seeing that in Grant County now, in Harney County. So the state of Oregon, we're really starting to limit groundwater pumping throughout these areas. We've got some new rules that we're doing that are severely going to limit groundwater pumping should they go through.
Which means cut back the resorts.
For people that have current wells
What's that?
or future.
They've talked about that. I don't know if they'll make a run at exempt uses. They've tried, but we've got 15 to 20,000 exempt wells in Deschutes County, so they're likely not gonna go after that. You're going after a big segment of the population that really doesn't use a lot of water. I showed you the slide, 15,000 gallons a day. Okay, well, that's great. They're allowed to take that. The average, 400.
Right.
People aren't pumping that much water out of the aquifer.
And when you think of aquifer, do you think of the entire state of Oregon with a straw in it, or do you think of pockets of water?
No, pockets. Central Oregon's aquifer is very, very unique. And again, I go back to that Swiss cheese, young lava. You guys have been up to Mount Bachelor, hiking around in the summertime up there?
Yeah.
When you're walking around on Bachelor, how many streams do you see coming off Bachelor? That gets 150 inches a year of precipitation. That ought to have 4 major rivers coming off of that thing. As soon as it goes right, go dump a bucket of water. You drive down the parkway, you look at the cut banks. You got this much soil, then you got these really big cracks and porous holes, and that holds and moves a phenomenal amount of water. The city of Bend punched a well over by Pilot Butte, must have been 15 years ago. They put the biggest pump they could in there and started pumping like mad, and they were getting 4,000 gallons a minute. A crazy amount. You could almost raft that out of that well. We were measuring it and we couldn't measure a drop, and we measure within, 100th of an inch. So this aquifer is so robust and transmissive, it moves around so well that you really can't draw it down. People are concerned about the major drop though, but that's, it's mainly climate that's driving that. We've been in 8 out of our last 10 years, my snow-tail sites have been below average.
So
Oh,
2016 and, no, that was 2017 winter and 2019, that didn't help, but it seemed like there was a lot of snow.
No, really, you wanna look at, Mount Bachelor, because when you look at a recharge map of the, like, I get that call all the time. Hey, we got 2 feet of snow in Bend, drought's over. Well, we don't get recharge here in Bend. That'll
Yeah,
wet up the top 2 feet of soil,
Right.
but we're not going into the
You
aquifer with
almost want
that.
that slow
Right.
release, right?
What's that?
You almost want that slow release.
We do, and that makes a big difference. But what we really want is, 80 inches of water in the snowpack along the Cascades.
mhm.
That's gonna make the difference. So we recharge in this basin about 3,500 cubic feet annually. So 3,500 CFS. So if you look at the Deschutes River today going through Bend, we're talking, because I just shut it back, we're talking 600-700 CFS.
Yeah.
We've got about 3,000 going under our feet the same direction.
Mm.
So this isn't, so when people get worried about the drop in the aquifer, this isn't the Ogallala aquifer in the Midwest that took, you know, tens of thousands of years to fill. Ours is a pass-through aquifer.
Mhm.
Every year it melts, the snow melts, it goes in the aquifer and shoots out the other end.
And we
And
get
so-
El Nino is what they're forecasting for this winter, which is not gonna help.
Yeah, but they've been saying that on analog years for really big El Niños, the El Niño is so big that it might spread north more and help us, but we're in dire need of a big water year.
Yeah.
You know, I've been running the reservoirs at, historically, I ran them in the top 25% of the reservoir. I ran them from full to 75% full. Today I run them from 0 to 50%. I mean, this is we really need some good water years here.
So my question then is like, so although we're looking at cannabis and industrial uses and everything like that, but with the continued growth in Bend and the impact that that's gonna have with water use.
Well,
Can I just interrupt real quick? I just wanna make sure that we stay on time and a little bit on topic on what we need to do here, because we are tasked with staying on topic about marijuana usage, so while I find
Yeah, oh,
this
yeah, no,
incredibly fascinating,
I think we're one.
I do wanna make sure that we're staying on topic for what we need to accomplish in today's meeting. There's lots of political and controversial issues, and so we don't want the committee to get off topic on some of these things.
So I think that's about all I have, unless there's any specific questions about the water use and marijuana that we've seen.
I'm good. Anybody else? Thank you, that
You're
was
welcome.
That was
very,
really
very
interesting.
helpful. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen.
Our next topic is the Jackson County mailer, which is included in our packet that we've had some discussion, should we propose to the county commissioners that they do, or the county does a similar mailing to the landowners in Deschutes County. And I just open the topic up for conversation. Would anybody like to share their opinions?
I mean, there's gonna be obviously some change in some of the language,
Of course, yeah.
and it doesn't sound like, at least from what I've heard from him, it's like we don't have quite the same issues that we have in Southwest Oregon, but I don't think it cannot hurt not to make sure people are doing due diligence, as well as information for, you know, even if you just live in Bend and all of a sudden, you know, your neighbor's got, you know, a big crop growing in their backyard, you know, having an understanding of like, oh, what do I do? How do I report this? What have you? I think that would be beneficial to the community.
All right, see you, Tony.
And Dustin, do you think sending something like this out will help? I mean, this is really more, I think, of an education for landowners not to rent out their land.
So I like the idea, there's gonna be a financial responsibility with it.
Right,
And then the question is, how do you do it through an assessor's office? Right, do you do it during tax season? When do you do it, right?
right,
Do you couple it with a mailer? And what happens is when everybody gets their taxes, you're gonna have all these brochures and people will pay attention.
right.
I think it's a good idea, the educational portion of it, because a lot of people are on social media and they don't watch local news. A lot of people are just really blind to what's going on in their own communities. How do you reach those people? Is it social media? Is that how you do it, where you do something with, you know, some sort of Facebook or some sort of social media contact, or do you do it in an actual mailer? I think it's beneficial, but there will be some sort of financial cost to it. I mean, is that something our county commissioners will want to bring on?
Right. And do we even dedicate some of the tax revenue that we're responsible for
To
to doing,
mailers.
to doing this as one of our objectives that we'll talk about in January?
And I think that's something where we just have to figure out what's going to reach the most people.
Mhm.
Because we don't necessarily need to send them to people living in apartments in the city limits, right?
Right,
Or they get more rural. And if you can get them into those people's hands in certain tax districts, I think that would
Mhm.
probably be more
beneficial.
So maybe we look at any property that is X number of acres, you know, an acre
I would say an
plus.
acre, I would say half to an acre, probably, because the majority of our illegal indoor kind of stuff that we end up doing is usually on an acre.
Mhm.
A lot of our stuff is south of Lava Butte,
Okay.
because it's more recluse. Properties are a little bit cheaper. When we get them up in Redmond and stuff like that too, in alfalfa. But I would say our main focus would be like southern Deschutes County and probably east side of Deschutes County, and then kind of rural areas of Redmond. And then towards Sisters also. I think it would be beneficial though, just for the educational portion of it. The question is how are you gonna reach the most people
Mhm.
effectively?
Right, right,
Makes sense though, send it out with the tax information.
which I just got
Yeah, I was like,
yesterday.
did you
Yeah, I
see
did
the
too.
2-pager from this year?
What's that?
We got a 2-pager this year. For Deschutes County.
Like information on the bonds that were passed and.
Just a little snippet in there would cost a lot less than a whole separate thing.
Correct.
Mhm.
I was saying before the meeting started that Plymouth County sent me one in their pamphlet this year, but they're like very strict wording in it, like if we catch you, we're gonna take your property.
Yeah, more of a fear tactic.
Yeah,
Mm.
instead of like, these are the niceties, this is how you report it, it's more like, if you do this,
Mm.
there will be consequences.
And I think it would be probably even more beneficial to have it as maybe a nicety letter of saying, this is how you can report it. If you have questions, you can call and talk to these people. That kind of a thing, right? Because then you're gonna gain compliance, you're gonna gain relationships with people more than you will the fear tactic, like you said. The fear tactic, I think the big portion of the fear tactic is essentially to check the box to say, we told you,
Mm.
and now you've done this and you've been warned.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Because they're wanting to lay more of your fines probably along that line.
It's illegal.
And again, like I said, that's what we do our innocent owner paperwork. Whenever we do a grow that's on a rented piece of property, we will mail the owners of the property and say, hey, you're on notice. And that's kind of in a large majority of the time, we don't have grows going back into those same locations. So we've been successful so far with the amount of stuff that we've done, but there's time, I guess, to bit discipline, there's time to educate. So
Right. So, yes, should we make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners that some type of letter should go out? I think you two are in agreement. Matt, what do you think?
yeah, I don't think you can hurt.
Okay, Andrew, I think you're good, yeah, and Sharon?
Am I a voting member or
You're a full-on member.
full-on member?
You're one of us, man.
Dude, you can have snacks. You
Did we not give you the jacket? The cap jacket?
Part of the club now. Yeah, and so Deschutes County puts that, I mean, I got my tax bill today too, and I opened up all these pages of stuff.
Yep.
I didn't read any of it other than, oh man, that's a big number that I have to pay.
Yes, what I
So,
see too.
I'm just wondering how many people read through everything that's on there. But if Deschutes County's sending that out, doesn't that make the cost pretty effective?
Well, because that was going in with the mailer anyway, yes, I'm
Yeah,
sure it was.
So you're talking about a separate,
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think we can make a recommendation to the commissioners however we want to. You know, would I pay more attention if it was a letter like this in an individual envelope? Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't,
No, I'll probably still recycle it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And even if it's a blurb in that double-sided thing, would I read it? You know, I mean, I kind of glanced at the stuff that was on there, but it was a lot and, you know.
No, I took a couple and then I started looking over like, okay, wait a minute here.
I know, I thought the other side was gonna be Spanish and it was still English. It's like, oh no.
No, I think I think that you get the tax statement, it's like, it takes you a couple days, but all of a sudden you're looking at it, I don't know. For me, it's like, oh, you're right, big number, here we go.
So if we wait for taxes, that's another year.
Right.
And is this something that's so urgent that we feel we need to send something to our county landowners sooner than a year?
No. I
No.
don't personally.
like I said, any education to the public is good, and so do I think it has to be done? I mean, it'd be nice if we didn't miss that deadline, but it is what it is.
Right,
And looking at the cost, like to do your own individual mailer to the county is going to cost a substantial amount of money.
right.
I think it would be more cost effective to have something on radio or social media.
Or all of that, you know, because what does that study say? You have to be exposed to some information, I don't know how many times.
But it's why your commercials are two back to back, because they want you to
Right,
remember what you just saw.
right.
Yeah.
So letter plus social plus, you know,
I think the social, but if you did the social, or did that initially, so the next year taxes and then that comes, it's like, okay, you've already been kind of given some information that this is a concern and this is coming your way. So, you know, just a thought.
okay. So I think that's what our recommendation to the commissioners is gonna be.
So do you want, so a couple things here is clearly this letter is not
Not appropriate.
applicable to
Right.
Deschutes County, so do you wanna does somebody wanna take a crack at writing a draft and sending it out and working that draft through email? Or somebody wanna take a crack at the draft, bring it at the next meeting, and then we can hash out the contents of that? I think that we probably wanna have the wording. Yeah, well, several things, we've got legal, but I mean, before we go to the commissioners, so the way this will work, I think, is having a draft of what this committee would like to actually communicate to the public to go before the commissioners, and at that time, I'll be the staff person, go before the commissioners, but I would ask if Liz is chair, or whoever's chair, and or one or two other people to come also before the commissioners, see if it's something they're interested in doing with the proposed outlet that you're interested in doing. So I'm wondering, social media, we could take a screenshot of a letter, but typically speaking on social media, the message is much smaller than like what a letter would be. But there's options out there. So I think there's just some details that need to be hashed out before we can bring it before the commission. But particularly a draft of some sort that has generically, and the commissioners, we bring drafts before them, all of letters before them all the time, and then they say what they want in and want out, but I think we need to have a draft of some sort.
Something for them to
Well,
see.
and
Yeah.
a notification, like, cause the DA's office with our grant, we put together that Cannabis website,
Yeah,
and even just a referral of, do you have questions? Do you have neighbors that you think are maybe doing this, or have you been approached? Visit this website, any questions, contact law enforcement, contact, you know, your local law enforcement, and see what they can talk to you about it.
mhm.
Instead of doing something, I have very short attention span, so I lose my interest real quick.
Yeah, I know, this was too much.
Right,
Quite
so,
frankly.
but if it was something, it was like, oh, marijuana, boom, caught my attention, look, you go, okay, well, yeah, we do have a couple houses in the neighborhood I'm kind of worried about, well, where can I go? Okay, now they can go to the website, they can poke around. And the website's
Yeah.
pretty friendly, and then they can call, we can talk. I mean, I don't mind fielding
Sounds like
calls.
Dustin's got the draft already.
I said
You're on,
short attention- I
Dustin.
said short
You're
attention
on.
span, right?
I mean, for something like that, we may not even need to go before the board, I check with our comms team, but we may be able to just post that on our social
But
media.
we try and do it with our media releases, you know, and it's every time we try and get a media release out, hey, we're seeing some of this stuff, if you guys have any questions, let us know.
Right,
We are very open, I'd rather have my patrol cops call me and say, hey, can you look at this location, I have some weird things I'm thinking about, cause I don't know. Cause most people don't know, it's so convoluted, right?
right,
More than half the time, you look at them and that's legal. Or, oh, no, there's not, we can do there, or maybe we can knock and talk to them, but no, you know what I mean?
yeah, Yeah.
But sometimes people just wanna be heard, and I think I've gotten a lot of referrals over the years from the Board of County Commissioners, because people reach out to their commissioner and say, this is my neighbor problem,
mm,
and then it ends up on my desk, and then I end up looking at it, and it's either something or it's not.
right,
But that's my job, okay, I get to look into that stuff, so
right,
just any way to get in their ear, in their head. And again, maybe that's a catchy phrase on the front of, on a mailer,
mhm,
right? Catchy phrase catches their attention, and they're like, oh, yeah, maybe I do have an issue.
mhm.
Where can I go? Okay, now I have a resource.
Okay, little different spin on that, and what do you
Just a thought.
think?
I think that's a good start.
Okay, so rather than a full-on letter, then what we'll do is a short blurb, and we'll figure out how that will be disseminated.
What would our common public want to like hear and see? Like what's gonna catch their attention?
Hate your neighbor.
Hate your neighbor. We might be able to help get rid of them.
That was a joke.
So Jeremy,
Yeah.
sweet neighbors.
I'm putting that in the official records. It's being recorded, but I'm not gonna.
All right. I'll come up with a few little blurbs based on what you said, and I might reach out to you again for some additional thoughts or ideas. And even you, Jeremy, you know, if you've got some, hearing how you have approached some of these illegal grows has been interesting, so, okay, I think we're good. I will,
So like a blurb that could fit into social media posts, that sort of thing.
Correct.
Versus a whole letter. Okay.
correct,
Just wanted to make sure I was getting the.
Remember
correct.
about 10 years ago, there was on Central Oregon TV, there was a series called Inside Deschutes County.
Right, we have that still.
And it's still out there.
We have a podcast.
Nobody watches.
You can come on the podcast.
Well, it was interesting because it would touch on something that the county had a role in, and they would do a special on it, and it would air over and over and over on that thing, but I haven't seen it in a long time, but
So
it
now
was
it's,
really,
now it's podcast. And I think it's
Yeah.
still called Inside Deschutes County. But like they rotate different things that go in for there, usually like a staff member, but
really informative though. I used to watch it and it'd say, the surveying department, what do they do? You know, what do they do with your tax dollars, things like that. I just, that was a great way to get it out there, but
we could propose kind of a dual thing of a social media blurb along with a podcast interview type thing. And you could, Jeremy and Dustin can come in for that, just giving real life experiences. Again, these are all proposals, but these are
Right.
things that we could talk to, and I could do this, you know, I can have one-on-one meetings with the commissioners just to get their sense of it
Okay,
versus having to do an official before the
Yeah.
board type thing.
right,
So that sounds like a
yeah,
good direction
Do you-
overall.
Know the viewership of the podcast?
No, but I could get those numbers.
Cause I know a lot of information is presented on the tubes, the YouTubes. But I think the viewer count is like enough under.
Wait, so we have YouTube and then we also, it's on Instagram and then Facebook, but I have no idea what those.
That's how I watch the commissioner meetings. It's like uploaded every Wednesday. Right there.
okay, well, I think that might be good. And then maybe we do put a blurb on the outside of the envelope. Got any questions about cannabis?
Yeah, I'll have to ask on, like, I have no idea what is allowed to go or like who approves what goes in those
Right,
property, but I can look into it. I know, I think I would do a question on that I didn't get back to. I just-
okay, I forgot, so.
Okay, great. I shouldn't say anything.
Okay, I think we're good on that one. Everyone good on that topic?
Yes.
The next topic is the Cannabis Advisory Panel Chair appointment. I've asked Jen to handle this part of the conversation. I'm happy to step out. Yes, I know this is a public meeting, but am I really gonna go back and see what all of you decided? So I think I will, just so there can be.
Sure, why don't you say for just a second, so we'll just say so Liz's position is up for chair, and originally the charter said 2 consecutive years for the chair. So we checked after last time, somebody posed a question, I think it was Hunter, I can't remember exactly. Somebody posed a question, saying, can Liz just run again? Or if anyone else is interested. I checked with legal counsel, we can just quickly adopt a change in the charter where Liz could run again, or if there's somebody else who's interested. So this, I just wanted to give that background. Liz, you can go sit in the break.
Nobody wanted to run.
I take a motion that this stays.
I thought you said you did.
No.
No, oh, okay,
Okay, well, this is easy then.
okay.
Okay, so then the motion would be at this juncture, well, I guess Matt and Jeremy, were you here? You guys were both here for that discussion. There is a position open for chair, yeah, if anyone's interested in it. Liz has graciously said that she would do it again if no one else was interested, so,
Favor of that.
found out I'm a
Sounds
voting
like
member
you
5
just
minutes ago.
Do you want to be chair?
No, I'm good.
So probably what we need then is a motion to change the charter. It's the very last page in your packet. And it's the red line sentence under section 7 to accept that change. And then a motion to nominate a chair. That's what we're looking at here.
I'll motion to amend the CAP charter to say for 2-year terms and to single line out the new panelist shall be chair for more than 2 consecutive years.
I'll second.
Vote.
I'm chair. I hope Liz.
I second.
I think technically we vote on the motion, but we can just, I'll just say it's unanimous. Seconded the motion, adopted unanimously, the amended changes. Any objections to the amended changes?
No.
Okay. Now we'll move on to the, now we need a chair, a nomination for a chair.
So I nominate Liz.
Dr. Miller nominates Liz,
Second.
Second.
everyone seconds. Do we have a vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously passed, great,
Easy.
brilliant.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Congratulations.
For better or for worse.
Acceptance speech?
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to take this moment. No, thank you. I enjoy this group and I enjoy this role, and Jen makes it really so easy for me. So thank you.
You're just really together though.
It's because of Jen.
Not true.
Really.
She's very together.
Now we are going on to public comments. I don't believe we have any member of the public, so we can move on to our next step. Mary indicated that January 15th is actually Martin Luther King Day. So
Ah.
we don't want to meet on that day.
Definitely, I won't be here.
What about the week later, the 22nd of January? That's also a Monday?
Sounds good for me.
Yeah?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll change that to January 22nd.
You guys
And
like meeting in this room? This all works for everyone?
yeah, this is
Yeah.
great. Yeah, this is comfortable. And I think for that meeting, we should talk about budget allocation again. Cause this year, didn't we do,
You have to finalize it in April.
so we had
So-
actual presentations
Yep.
in January.
So January, this is how it went. In January, you talked about what you wanted, and that's when you guys came up with having these little presentations.
Right,
Then we sent it out to the department, and then they did it in April, and then you voted. So there's 2 things. The other thing that you talked about potentially doing is having those departments that did get the funding last time come before you in January,
that,
give just updates on
Yeah.
how they're spending that money. Which would be CDD, Health Services, Dustin, and then Community Justice. And then also coming up for a process of what you wanna do for your budget for the next year. So basically like kind of determining how you wanna decide your budget, if you want it the same way or.
right.
Um,
So I think, yes, we do want to hear from
Yes.
the departments that
Okay.
receive funding, an update, doesn't have to be long. And they could even call in by Zoom, they don't have to be here, because I
Okay.
recognize that this is after hours for them. And do we want any other presentations from any net new? I think last year we put the request out, I think Eric did, or did you put the request out to all the departments?
I think it was a narrower focus, cause
Okay,
not all, like roads is not gonna,
okay,
facilities is not gonna request property management. You know,
Right,
like, I think it
right.
was, I think it was to all departments who may have an interest, which I think is basically these 4 departments.
okay, all right. So I think we're fine with that.
What if,
Okay.
you know
But we're not asking them to, in January, we're just asking them to come back and report on their funds, on how they've been using their funds that was given to them. It just started January 1st, so they'll be 6 months into
Okay.
using those funds that were allocated, because our fiscal year starts January 1 or July 1. And then
In April, we'd be looking
in
at.
April, you would look at having them come before you with presentations. and then voting on it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a light meeting next time, which is fine. This one was as well. Is there anything else you have that you wanna talk through? I mean, we'll talk about, the other thing is we'll figure out this social media blurb, this, you know,
Right.
PSA outreach on that sort of thing, and I'll have a little bit more guidance on my end of what we think we can do and can't do, and you'll have that draft, so we can discuss that too. But is there anything else that you guys want to talk
I think
about?
it'd be good just to get more of a follow-up from the sheriff's department of like, what's, you know, kind of up to date from now we're going into the fall season and harvest and everything's going on, and maybe up to date with, okay, so, you know, what was happening for you guys on the ground, violations, any of that stuff.
You know, the people we said not to give money to, what was that,
So you didn't decide not to give money to anyone last time. So the way it went last time is CDD asked for $20,000, they got it for code compliance. Health Services asked for $60,000 for PSAs, they got it. Sheriff's Office asked for $75,000, we gave them $92,000. And then Community Justice Department asked for $25,000 for staff training, and you guys knocked that down to $10,000.
so the health department is the one we were worried about,
The Community Justice.
just.
It was that training where they were like, what is it? Actually, I have it right here.
It was pretty specific to just their staff and it wasn't really encompassing the whole community.
It was, let's see. They wrote a lot, so I'm just trying to narrow it down to, they're requesting a grant to provide funding to support these efforts. These efforts are continuing to explore different external options. It's just a lot.
Wasn't it like a training thing?
It was a very
Training.
specific, the majority of funds will be used to bring in trainers to provide the training to offer the evidence-based manualized SUD treatment. We will only consider options that are evidence-based and research has shown their effectiveness with youth involved in a community justice setting. So it was, so training estimate is $22,000 for a 4-day University of Cincinnati training course and $1,000 for any certifications or registration requirements for Oregon, and then $2,000 for workbook. So it was a very specific Cincinnati training course, which is evidence-based substance abuse disorder treatment options for all youth regardless of geographic location. If my memory serves me correctly, I think because it was for all substance abuse versus not just strictly marijuana, that there was a narrower granting of funds from, if I remember the discussion.
And there was also the number of seats that training course was open to, and it seemed like it was a lot, and they didn't have that many people to fill, and
It was very narrow. And
Yeah.
it wasn't gonna be open to the whole community. It was gonna be really just sort of committee focused. So it wasn't gonna be all encompassing as some of the other educational stuff was gonna be.
Right. Here's the question, Jen.
Yep.
This may be totally off the wall, but when we had the presentation from, the gentleman who was sitting here.
Yeah, Keith, Sergeant Vanderkamp.
Yes, and they are an external nonprofit, not connected with the county, but I know the county.
He is connected with the county,
Okay,
but
I'm
his
sorry.
nonprofit, you can probably speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, he
clearer.
works for the sheriff's office as a
Yeah.
sergeant, and
Okay.
he is a sergeant on our drug team, but
Okay,
he sits on the board for that organization, which is separate.
okay. And that organization is a nonprofit, and I think the county has grants that they can issue to nonprofits. And would our charter allow us to make a recommendation to the commissioners to divert, and I'm not saying that organization, but to make a grant to an organization that might be helping in this area of youth abuse of cannabis?
So let me get your question correct. You are saying you would like basically endorse or like recommend a nonprofit to get the grant funds?
Right,
So the grant funds are very discretionary, so they go before, we just had this we just did Q2 a week and a half ago, and I'm working on that, so I have a little bit of background on that.
okay,
But basically, like, these nonprofits apply for them, they go before the commissioners, they ask for a set amount of dollars, and then each commissioner has a pool of funds.
okay,
And so then they can say, usually it's somewhere between $250, $500, $750, or $1,000 that they give in their pool of funds.
Okay.
And they have a pool of fund for the whole year, and so then they go through all of the different ones, and it's split all the time. Sometimes all the commissioners will give some money, sometimes none will, some will give one, some won't give any. So you could recommend it to the commissioners, but it's really their own money that they can use.
They already
It's
have
not their money, but it's
Yeah.
their pool of money
They have their.
that they wanna do for their own purposes.
Okay.
Now, this nonprofit could definitely apply for it, and you could submit a letter saying the Cannabis Advisory Panel is in support of that, but it's really, it's why it's called discretionary for
Okay,
a very
okay.
particular reason.
Yeah. Just wanted to ask.
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
Okay.
Sorry, Dustin, what were you gonna give, you're gonna give a update on what next
I
time?
can maybe just kind of give the stats of the current, the last year, kind of like what we're seeing trends.
Current marijuana
Yeah,
culture.
trends, culture, kind of what we're seeing. Cause I think now, I mean, this year's changed, especially with all the ODA stuff, really knocked back on hemp stuff, not seeing as many outdoor grows. So
Yeah.
I can do just a short presentation on it, it doesn't have to be a ton. Kind of see what we're seeing and how things have changed in the last couple of years.
Good.
You know how
And that'll be the January.
we've often talked about how
I'll remind you.
the Senate bill reduced
I'll
our
reach out a
amount
couple weeks ago.
of funding that we're able to receive.
Measure 110.
Yes. Does anybody, because I haven't done my own research, and I might be ignorant in this field, but do we have facts of how that money's getting utilized at all at this stage?
The Measure 110, they have opened up remedial locations for people that have been cited for public use of illegal drugs, and they're supposed to go in and get help. But there's like a $50 ticket and it's not enforced, and so the police aren't writing those tickets. And I know that there is a lot of conversation from a lot of legislatures saying that Measure 110 is a failure. It's even been in,
It's in every, the board discussed it today, it's in every conversation.
Yeah. yeah,
It's just like
I think
a
right
lot
now,
of-
I think the big thing about the funds were is they were about 2 years delayed from when Measure 110 went into effect versus those dollars getting out to like the health services departments. But I couldn't speak anything further on that. I think the funds are now just starting to flow, and so there's been a long delay of like the intent and the purpose of 110 and where those dollars were gonna go to actually, using it, and so then in between you have just this void.
Giant pool of money sitting there.
So I think it is gonna be the topic of conversation for a long time.
Yeah.
I do think it should be reduced a little bit maybe,
so more money comes to,
so that
The
more money
counties, the
comes to
city.
things like this. But at the same time, instead of getting that $50 ticket, that money could be used to require you to go to treatment. So, okay, but becomes a whole. other
Reach out to your legislature.
yeah.
I'm trying to calm me down, so we'll see.
That's funny.
You're better. So can I just recap real quick
Yes,
on for
yes.
next steps? So for the next meeting, we're gonna have an update to you guys from the 4 departments who got the recommended spending from the fiscal year 24 for the first 6 months. We're gonna finalize the proposed PSA outreach campaign based off of the Jackson County letter, and Dustin's gonna give an update on current marijuana trends and culture throughout the county.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
just wanna make sure I got that.
Yep. Okay, anything else? Anybody?
I had something, but I forgot it.
I'll give you 30 seconds.
No.
Okay, all right, meeting is adjourned at 7:27. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you all.
A lovely Thanksgiving and a good winter
Happy
break
holidays.
and.
I'll take some snacks. Take snacks for the road if anyone wants any.